Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, ECOWAS leaders adopt symbol for the proposed regional single currency at the F56 ordinary session in Abuja, express concern over continued activists of terrorists in the region. Residents of Ekiti farming community raise concerns over the hoisting of flag in their area by persons suspected to be herders. Fear grips communities in Benue, Taraba and Nasarawa states as military begins gradual withdrawal of troops of Operation Real Stroke from the three states. And death toll rises as fires sweep across three states in Australia as fire officials continue the fight to quench the blaze.
On business news tonight, Sierra Leonean government announces plans to kickstart a currency swap deal with Nigeria.
On sports news tonight, world number 1 Rafa Nadal beats Stefanos Tsitsipas 6-7, 7-5, 7-6 to win the Mubadala World Tennis Championship in Abu Dhabi.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, today moved a step closer to achieving a single currency with the adoption of the symbol EC at the 56th ordinary session of the ECOWAS heads of state and governments in Abuja. President Muhammadu Buhari and other West African leaders say they are concerned over the activities of terrorists in the region, though. They are, however, impressed by the overall economic improvements during the year. Our correspondent Ibrahim Adra now reports.
President Muhammadu Buhari leads other heads of state and government to the opening of the 56th session.
Please take your seats.
While welcoming delegates, President Buhari bears his mind on terrorism ravaging the region.
Terrorism remains the major threat to the peace and progress of our region. Recurrent attacks by terrorist groups remind us of the urgency to build an enduring security partnership to confront and defeat the evil of cross-border terrorism.
A moment of silence was observed in honor of soldiers killed in recent attacks by terrorists in Niger Republic.
May their souls rest in perfect peace.
Other speakers share the same worries, but are however hopeful of a bright future for the region.
We've already commenced work in partnership with Agence Française de Développement in Burkina Faso with the Yelen Solar Project, the Segu Solar in Mali, the Jamea Solar Project in Chad, and the Jigawa Solar Park in Nigeria. We will light up the Sahel. We will ignite hope for 250 million people.
The meeting entered a closed session where it discussed an elaborate agenda. Among them is the community's annual report, the ECOWAS single currency, and elections in Guinea-Bissau. These issues gained prominence in the communique at the end of deliberations. The community restates determination to fight terrorism while noting with pride the economic improvement recorded during the year. It calls for the speedy conclusion and implementation of the ECOWAS single currency. The forum adopted EC as symbol for the single currency when operational, while the community's apex bank will be known as Central Bank of West Africa. As the meeting ends, leaders were unable to say which country will host the next meeting nor the date, promising further consultations. From the banquet hall of the State House, Abuja, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the United States has added Nigeria to its special watch lists of governments that have engaged in or tolerate what it describes as severe violations of religious freedom. A statement by the Secretary of the State, Mike Pompeo, made public on the State Department's website, explains that Nigeria was added to the list alongside Cuba, Nicaragua and Sudan, while designating Boko Haram amongst other terrorist organizations as entities of particular concern. It adds that the designations underscores the United States' commitment to protect those who seek to exercise their freedom of religion or belief anywhere in the world. In his words, we believe that anyone, anywhere, at all times, would have the right to live according to the dictates of their conscience. We will continue to challenge states and non-state entities that seek to infringe upon those fundamental rights and to ensure that they are held to account for their actions. He insists that the United States will continue to act to ensure that no country, entity or individual should be allowed to persecute people of faith without accountability. Meanwhile, the sight of a red flag hanging around the farm settlement in Ekiti is generating tensions in the area, with residents alleging that it was hoisted by herdsmen. Residents have also warned their kinsmen to keep off as they consider the sighting of the flag as a signal of territorial takeover. But the state government has doused the tension, allaying all fears.
Located on the outskirts of Ori community, the Ori farm settlement has been a spotlight of contention between the locals and visiting herdsmen grazing their cattle in the area. But the sight of a red flag with inscriptions hanging on the farm settlement signals that unauthorized persons have taken over the land. This has generated tension in the area. Residents who now live in fear are protesting against this scary development. They think it's a trademark of invasion by suspected herdsmen to displace them.
We notice one flag, red flag, position at farm settlement, threatening the life of the community. They wrote keep off. They now draw cattle, reara, and some cattle. There is something. The flag was positioned by these herdsmen.
These herdsmen want to displace the whole community. They want to invade this town. They've been doing it for a long time. They've even gone to the extent of killing one of our able-bodied men here.
Despite the tension, the state government sees nothing to worry about. The Commissioner for Information allays the fears, assuring residents that the flag is insignificant.
If this kind of thing happens, the first people to be alerted should be the security forces or the people in charge of security. But nobody was called. People went out with placards to protest. But we're trying to tell the people of Ekiti State and the rest of the country that has heard all the, the reports, going around because it went viral. Nothing is wrong in Ekiti State. Nothing has happened in Ori to bring about that kind of protest.
Ori community has recorded some unpleasant experiences in the past linked to suspected herdsmen. But now all the people want is for the state government to take concrete steps to further assure them of their safety.
Still talking about safety, the Defence Headquarters today confirmed the troops of Operation Real Stroke deployed to combat herdsmen attacks, communal crisis and militia groups in Benue, Nasarawa and Taraba State will be withdrawn gradually. And this has been a major concern for the people of the states. The operation, which began in June 2018, has largely restored peace in the areas, but the people insist it does not guarantee total safety, especially in the dry season.
Troops from the 72 and 93 Battalion Makodi and Takum, deployed by the Defense Headquarters in the Special Operation Well Stroke in 2018 to combat herdsmen and farmers' conflict and other communal crises in Benue, Taraba and Nasarawa states. Force Commander Major General Adeyemi Yekini leads the Acting Director, Directorate of Defense Information, to a media tour at Biche, the conquered stronghold of a wanted Benue militia leader. He gives a breakdown of the force strategy in restoring peace in the area.
We came in here, neutralized those of them that refused to be neutralized, that refused to run, and captured those that could be captured, and we are able to really liberate this area. So in a way, since we did this deployment, you will see that the TVG crisis has gradually abated almost to zero.
The force confirms the gradual withdrawal of troops from Benue, Nasarawa and Taraba states, as it believes their work there is done.
It's not an outright shutdown of the operation. So it's not as if we're going to close down the operation, pack our bags and baggages, and vacate the operational area. That is not what is happening. So I won't want anybody to panic in Benue State, Taraba, or Nasarawa State.
But the news of the withdrawal is not a cherry one to the state governments and residents.
It's a bit too early to talk of withdrawing them completely, especially in terms of farmer-sellers clashes. We are getting into the dry season, and that is when we experience a lot of this crisis.
The security should remain here because they don't know. If they leave, you will not see anybody here because the fire has quenched, but the ash is still hot.
Speaking on the restoration of peace after the Jukung and Tiv crisis, Wukari local government leaders have debunked allegations of Tiv ethnic groups not being allowed to return to their homes in Wukari.
So if there should be anybody that tell you that Tiv people are not coming, it's a lie. Even within this community, you can find out from them. Tiv people will come, they give them food, they go.
Although economic and social activities have been restored and peace substantially returned to most parts of the military deployment, the employment of community-based solutions to sustain the peace now rests with the governments of Benue, Taraba and Nasarawa states, as well as the leaders of the various communities seen as troubled spots for conflict.
Staying with security matters, a tragedy struck in the Dutse area of Abuja today as a police inspector, John Marcus, killed his colleague and later committed suicide. The incident, which occurred very early in the morning at the Dutse Police Divisional Headquarters, also left another police officer injured. The Commissioner of Police in the Federal Capital Territory, the FCT, Mr. Balachiroma, confirmed this to Channels Television via telephone interview. The incident occurred as Marcus, who was set to be on duty as a station guard, fired a round of ammunition into the air. He was reported to have been called to order by Police Corporal Matthew Akubo. But the inspector turned to his subordinate and shot him in the head. Thereafter, a superintendent of police, Abdullahi Ovanu, came out from the office to inquire what had happened, but the inspector also shot him in the arm. A few minutes later, Marcus put the gun into his mouth and pulled the trigger, killing himself on the spot. Meanwhile, the police in Ogun State have launched a manhunt for the killer of a man allegedly shot dead by a naval raid-in at the popular Kara market in the Isheri area of Ogun State over 100 naira note. An eyewitness who prefers to be kept unidentified told Channels Television that the military man asked if the man should move, he would shoot him, and he made good his promise. The Commissioner of Police in Ogun State, Kenneth Ebrimson, says that he deployed his officers to the market to forestall a breakdown of law and order while investigations are on to identify the culprit. This is the second time a military personnel deployed to the market will shoot dead civilians this year. The first was during the Isheri Day celebration in August, where 3 people were alleged to have been killed by military personnel. We now have an important update on the story of the young man who climbed a telecommunications mast in Taraba State and refused to come down despite several pleas from members of the community and security officials. Well, Channels Television can now confirm that the man, identified as Joseph Stephen, has finally come down from the mast after several efforts by officials of the Department of State Services. Before agreeing to come down, Joseph had told our correspondent that he was willing to stay up there until the delegation being sent by Prophet TB Joshua of the synagogue church arrives. He climbed the mast on Friday, threatening to jump unless he got audience from Prophet TB Joshua.
Hey, please. Allah, that must wear, please. You don't need that must wear, please.
What a story. Joshua finally comes down. in part 2 after the break. Operatives of the Nigeria Customs Service raid Mubi Market, seize bags of rice allegedly smuggled into the country. Stay with us.